Happy Sunday to everyone, and good day to everyone out there. And I wanted people to know that this video came off the top of my head. I'm kind of going by feel here. Most of the topics I talk about, I've thought about, reminisced, ruminated, thought about in my head for a period of at least an hour or so, sometimes days. And it really depends on the controversy of a subject. I've got a whole shitload of different notes. I mean, they literally litter my entire office here. I've got ones about the red heifer and Judaism and some of the YouTubers that I wanted to talk about, like Lucky Frank and Mark Dreams, if you're both out there. One to come in the future for y'all. So much shit that I'm immersed in my daily life that I want to talk about. And sometimes, rarely, something comes up that I want to just spontaneously talk about. And today it was about kids. I was going to talk about children, having kids, and I guess it led me into thinking about who are you obligated to? This is an issue that I think a lot of people have a problem with right now in their own personal lives. And I'm not talking individuals, but let's say wherever you work, your workplace, your peers, your wife, your children, all the different people that you interact with in your life. As I was going to the bathroom to come back out to make a video about kids, I decided I was going to completely change that and make it about obligations instead. Because thinking about children naturally leads to your thought about obligations. If you don't have kids, I'm not one of those guys that's going to say, well, if you don't have kids, you just don't get it. Because people do. They do get it. A lot of people are caregivers for other kids or grandparents that take care of their grandkids. People don't always forget what it's like to raise kids. It's very difficult. I'm a parent. I have 3 kids. My 2 youngest, my son's birthday party was yesterday. He's turned 12. I gave him a gaming PC and a phone. It's what you give kids these days, right? Things have changed. My other son is 9. He'll be 9 anyway, shortly. And they're about 3 years apart. My oldest son, he's up here at 26. He's the big brother who tries to help them out, teach them the right ways of the world. Raising kids is the most difficult job, the most thankless job, and the most frustrating thing that I've ever done in my life. Any parent who tells you differently is full of shit. Being honest as a parent means you realize that raising kids is a huge pain in the ass and a burden on you. That's not a bad thing. On the contrary, it's a good thing, because it shows that if it is difficult for you, which it should be, that means you're doing a good job. I get frustrated as hell when my kids cause trouble and scream and cry and slam doors. You know, when they act demanding and entitled. They're also growing up in a generation where things are changing so fast that you have to keep up with technology that as parents we don't even understand half the time. And it's kind of always been that way, but it's exponentially increasing, as we all know. I try to keep up with current things, but you can only know so much. So that led me to the thought of being obligated to children. Absolutely. And that is the root of marriage. When I was younger, I remember didn't really think marriage really meant anything. Like, it's just a piece of paper. Whatever. You have a ceremony. It's just some religious thing that you do. But I spoke to a lot of people who weren't even religious who said, no, it's that moment that seals the deal. Think of it as like a rite of passage, just like a person becoming an adult. And in many cultures, we have rites of passage, which don't really mean anything by themselves, but in a cultural context, they do. It's not just saying I'm tied to you and I'm forced to live with you. It's saying I'm dedicated enough to dedicate my life to you and showing that through a ceremony. It's kind of like we don't have to become overwhelmed with society's norms. This is something that over the last 20 years I've really analyzed a lot. Like, I don't have to follow what society tells me to do. I don't need a certificate to tell me I'm this or I'm that, or a college degree or a marriage certificate, or my kids don't need to have this education. This is all what society expects of us, and I don't have to live by it. But the truth is, we do. Even though school, for example, is imperfect for our kids, by sending them there, they get a lot more than just a basic education. They hang out in the hallways, they do sports, they do art projects, they sneak off and do things they're not supposed to do, which as a parent I love. I want a kid who can rebel a little bit. Not too much now, mind you. I mean, I don't want a kid who's going to totally flake off his parents, but I want a kid who will think for himself. Because we're moving into a world where that's going to be more important than ever. You know, maybe in my parents' generation it was okay to be a cookie cutter kid, which is what I've always called them. Just go to school, go to college, get a job, have a retirement. That worked. It was a very short window from the early mid 1900s up until like the 80s, where people were able to live comfortably, come home to their white picket fence and their, cars, 2-car garage and 2.5 kids. We know the truth now that we're moving into a future where it's going to be much more difficult for our children. And that sucks as a parent. That's frustrating. And on top of that, we have a pandemic, we have economic collapse, inflation, we have a housing crisis as far as young couples aren't even able to live to the standards their parents did, which we were promised it would be better, right? And this is only going to lead to more turmoil. So as a parent, I start to second guess myself. Who am I obligated to? And the only people that I've realized that I'm truly obligated to are my kids who are in there, and my wife, and my mom. That's it. Even parents, that's, for a lot of people, that's a contentious issue. They say, well, my parents sucked. Well, my parents didn't. I love my parents. I love my mom. My dad passed away from cancer. From carcinoma when I was about 14, 15. So, but my mom, she took time out of her life to raise me. And that is an obligation for me to take care of her any way I can. It can be hard. We don't always agree with parents. But the same way with kids. I chose to have kids. And I chose to get married. And I'm so grateful that I live in a family where my kids and my wife and all of us love each other. Because 2020 was a fucked up year. And 2021 is becoming a very fucked up year as well. All the shit that's going on right now, it just makes people lose hope. I mean, I live in the Pacific Northwest. There's lots of fires, sure. I don't worry about that shit. There's a potential for all kinds of cataclysms that could happen. But generally, we live a pretty relaxed life. But, damn, the tyranny that's going on, the way that people are treating each other, and this separation of left and right, up and down, back and forth, red and blue, green and yellow, it doesn't matter. People want to force themselves into this tribalism when times are tough. And times are tough right now for a lot of people. And I'll be honest, brutally honest here. I've found myself getting angry at stupid shit over the past year. And it's been moderate. It's not increasing because I'm very self-aware. I'm self-aware of my emotions, constantly aware of my frustration levels, whether I'm easily irritated or not. I compare what's going on in my life to what's going on in the world, to my diet, to my intake of substances, drugs, caffeine, whatever it might be. All these things play a role in how we feel. And those of us who have learned to moderate our emotions know that we can take a certain level of certain substances, a certain level of news, a certain level, basically the internet is a drug today. Everybody who goes on their phone all day long realizes that it's the dopamine rush they're after. You, just as well as me, have flipped from one site to another and then gone back to the first one to see if anything changed. It's the same thing as refresh, refresh, refresh. And that is the world we're living in right now, is a refresh world. God, that's something I really want to take a side note of. Somebody put that in the comments section so I don't forget it. But we live in a refresh rate world, I guess. It's all about how quickly can we see what else is going on. It's not good enough to process what we already know in our hearts. So it's a go, go, go world. And it produces people like me who talk fast. And I try to slow myself down. You know what I mean? Deep breath, dude. I'm an intense person. Those around me know that when I get talking, when I get going, I can be an annoyance to those around me. And I get that. I realize it. I'm self-aware. I self-analyze consistently. And because of this, I see it in other people too. When people say things like, oh, well, you just make YouTube videos so people will comment and, you know, you can, be seen. I'll say, you're right. If it was about money, then I'd be, you know, making a bunch of money. But really it is just about talking. I guess that means being seen so people hear me. Maybe being heard is a better term. That people hear what I have to say. And I figure, you know, a lot of self-analysis on this has led me to believe that's okay. That it's okay for me to be recognized for my thoughts because I work on them. It's something I try to polish. I try to polish my communication skills and what I have to share to the world. Some people become frustrated by that. Some people become jealous of that. Some people don't like people who communicate well. And so I become hated by certain people just because of who I am. Not anything specific I said. You just have to learn to accept that. That's kind of the world that, I mean world in the sense of our internal world, our dialogue, the way that we live, the way we experience each other, that we have to realize that we will not be loved by everyone, and that's okay. If you are, then there's something wrong with you. You know, even the nicest people are hated by somebody, maybe because they're nice. And even some of the most cynical people, if they're honest, are ridiculed. You know, you've got the George Carlins of the world who everything he said was pretty much straight up. Not all of it, but you know. But he was hated because of the way he carried it. And, you know, it's just a complicated world to live in. So I'm going to go watch my my own live stream here because I have one coming up about being positive has drawbacks. It says it's premiering now. I wonder if anybody's there. We'll see. It says 2 people are waiting, so I might as well go join. It's just a premiere. I thought it would be kind of fun to share some of those thoughts. And as a 45-year-old adult male with kids, I find it cheesy to do YouTube premieres. And I find it cheesy to be into social media the way I am. I despise Instagram and Facebook. I've left them out of my lives now. I have never used Instagram, but like everyone, I used to have a Facebook account. And I've also left, you know, a lot of these things behind because they didn't suit me. But YouTube has always been useful for me. So it's a way for me to express myself. And, yeah. I don't know what else to say. I guess I'm out. I guess I'm going to watch this premiere. And I would say join the premiere, but I know you can't. Because this will be uploaded later than this. Time. Weird shit. Talk to you next.